Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Purdue, and I am a nerd, and this is the, gosh, is it November already, 2009 virtual user group meeting that we affectionately call the Watercooler. Today we are going to talk about, gosh, is it year-end already? And we're going to cover our 5 classic topics that we've covered in years before, but they're always important and they're always things that you need to consider. We're going to talk about how to make a complete historical backup so that in 3 months when your accountant says, hey, what was this number at the end of the year, you can go back and find it. We're going to talk about what checks you need to void and why it's so important to void them at a certain time. We're going to talk about archiving the GL client, in other words, creating a historical GL client that you can open up and look at journal records in as if you were back a year or back 2 years or back 3 years, provided, of course, you've been doing this for that many years. What reports to run at year end, and finally, how to find out more information, which is basically our synopsis of the available knowledge base articles. So, with that said, I'm going to start with a little bit of house cleaning and let everybody know that they are probably looking at a huge blue box over on the right-hand side of their screen that tells them all sorts of things that they probably don't care about except when they want to ask a question. So there is a little box that juts out to the left, and the top icon in that box is one that looks like arrows pointing to the right, and if you click that icon, it will collapse this big box and get it out of the way so that you can see what's behind it, because it may be covering up parts of my screen. Once you do collapse that big box, that icon with the arrows pointing to the right will turn into an icon with the arrows pointing to the left. And that means that if you click that again, you'll be able to bring that box back into view. Why would you want to bring that box back into view? Because you have a question and you're shy. If you have a question and you're shy, you come here and type the question right here. Mary Jo will see it if I'm talking, and I will see it if Mary Jo's talking, and we will interrupt each other and let whoever's talking know that there's a question, and we'll answer that question. If you have a question and you are not shy, instead of expanding this box and typing your question here, you can just click on this little icon that looks like a hand with an up arrow, and if you haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, that means you are raising your hand. And we will see that you've raised your hand, and we will unmute you at some point and say, go ahead and ask your question. And since you aren't shy, you will ask your question. So this button here gets everything out of the way. It then becomes a button that gets everything back, where you can type a question here, or you can always raise your hand there. So we'll get rid of this, and I will start by talking about talking about making a complete historical backup. A couple years ago, someone had a brilliant idea, but let me set it up first. You've closed out 2009, you've gone through your January billing, you've done your final bills in January and updated, you've done your final bills in February and updated, you've printed income statements, balance sheets, whatever in your GL, and come March, when the accountants start to really sweat about the fact that they have tax returns due, the accountant starts to ask you questions like, what was your gross receivables at the end of 2009? Or what was your balance in this particular account at the end of 2009? Well, if you simply look in your system the way it is after you've updated January and updated February and you're sitting here operating in March, it's going to be very difficult in many instances to answer those questions. So what we decided, or somebody came up with the idea for a couple years ago, is just make what we call a quick and dirty backup of everything that's STI related. Now, don't tell the people at STI about this, because they don't like the fact that you've got programs that live in 2 directories. But as far as I'm concerned, if you need to go back to a certain point in time and you get out of the current version of Tabs that you're using and the current version of GL that you're using, and you switch over to this other directory temporarily and run the programs in there, who cares? You didn't steal them. You're not giving them to somebody else. You're running only one of them at a time. So although you technically are violating the license agreement by having 2 copies on your machine, it really is very, very handy, and I don't think I've ever heard of anybody getting in trouble for that. If you go into Windows Explorer, which you can do by right-clicking on the Start button and choosing Explore, or double-clicking on My Computer, or whatever it is that you want to do. And then go to your C drive. Eventually, you will find a folder. Ours is called WOW, because that's our demo data. It's got some stuff in it that makes people say, wow. Yours is probably called STI. But if you highlight that and right-click it, first you click on it to make it highlighted, and right-click it and choose Copy, don't choose Cut. And then you right-click anywhere over here and choose Paste. I'm not going to do it because it would tie up my machine.
Okay,
it will make an...
Stop you for just a second. Because it's probably not going to be on their C drive if they're in a network situation. You're going to have to navigate out to whatever drive your STI folder data lives on the server. So it might be the G drive, it might be the F drive, it might be the N drive. Wherever that data drive is on the server, that's where you're going to go find that STI folder.
And playing the voice of reason today is Mary Jo Blum. That's exactly right, because you may get over to your C drive and find a Tabs3 folder, because STI actually creates a folder in your local machine, even if you're running from a network drive. You need to find the folder where your data lives. One good way to find that that is actually the right folder is usually you will have a CM system and a CM report directory folder underneath. You will have, if you look at it by date modified, you'll see lots of files with today's date or very recent dates that you won't see. My demo system isn't used quite as often, so that you won't see in the local drive. But the bottom line is you need to get to the real data on the server, usually in a folder called STI.
And if you want a quick way to find what that drive is, if you are in the software, any of the GL tabs, any of those, and you go to Help About Tabs3 or About GLS, it's going to show you what the current working directory is. And if it might say G, it might say F, it might say N, whatever that is, that's where you need to go to find the STI folder.
Wow.
Real fast way, easy way to find it.
She's good at playing this voice of reason thing. That's exactly right. You go into Help About, and you look at your current working directory, and that's where you're going. Once you've gotten there, and you can see that, you don't want to be in the folder, which is what I am now. You want to be where you can see that folder. You click on it, not twice like I keep doing and getting into the rename mode, but once. You right-click, you choose Copy, you right-click over here in the white space, you choose Paste, and it will make a copy. And it will call it Copy of whatever. If I were to do this right now, it would create a folder called Copy of WOW. Later on then, if you come out to and double-click on that Copy of WOW and go in here and then find the tabs3.exe, which is this. I'm not showing my exe extension because I'm in Vista, but if you find that Tabs3 file and run it, you'll be going back to the point in time where you made this copy. And what that means is that if you make this copy, the very first thing after you've closed your year, or the very first thing on January 2nd, then you'll have this historical slice of time that you can go back to and answer questions when your accountant or managing partner or somebody says, what was this figure at the end of the year? What was this figure at the end of the year? Instead of going into your current system that's been updated and moved ahead to March or April or wherever you happen to be, you go back to this system, and it happens to be right at that slice in time, and you'll be able to see all those exact figures without having to reconstruct them from the current data.
And just one other helpful thing, I would just rename that copy of WOW or copy of STI to, STI backup 12/31/09.
Exactly.
Like that, so you know that's your year-end backup. Somehow rename it STI year-end 2009. Something so you know what it is.
Exactly. So that you then know not to get rid of that until you're done with taxes and you're done with everything that goes along with closing the year. Now, people ask, what happens when you close the year? Well, in GL, one of the things that happens is that your journal entries from 2 years ago, go away. STI will only hold journal entries for 3 years. So you've got your current year, which you're just moving into, your year that you're just closing, and the year before. So if you have checks that were written in accounts payable in the area where the journal entries are going to go away, let's say you're closing 2009. It's going to move you to 2010, so it's going to open up a whole new area to put the journal entries for 2010. It's still going to have the 2009 journal entries, and it's still going to have the 2008 journal entries, but it's going to get rid of the 2007 journal entries. Now, if you have an older version of the software and it's not 15 or 14, I think at one point it actually only held 2 years worth, your current year and your prior year. So you want to be cognizant of the fact that if you're still operating on version 12 or version 11, or God forbid version 10, you might actually be losing 2008 journal entries. Well, if some of the journal entries represent checks that still have not cleared your bank account, and that should have, and that aren't going to probably, they've probably been lost, they probably never were sent, they've somehow fallen through the cracks, and if you don't void them before those journal entries go away, it becomes very, very difficult to void them, because the underlying journal entries are gone, and therefore you'll still see the checks and accounts payable, but when you go to void them, it won't be able to reverse them, and they'll still keep showing up in your reconciliation, and it will cause lots of trouble for you. So bottom line is, get rid of, by voiding, any checks that have not cleared your bank that are from the period where the journal entries are going to be cleared. And if you're currently on version 14 or 15, and you're closing out the year 2009, that's going to be any checks from 2007 or prior. Obviously, you're not going to have any prior because last time you closed, it wiped out the journal entries from 2006. So to recap, look by printing a list in accounts payable of all your unreconciled checks. Go into accounts payable, go into the check section, and you want to print a check register of all those that are, help me out here, Mary Jo. Am I in the wrong place?
Here, look up. Check register.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can put in date. Let's go. Go to the invoice tab.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have control. And then you can put in your dates. You can say any checks from, whatever year it is that you want.
Gotcha. Exactly. Okay. And very good. So print that list out. Make sure that you get rid of those checks by voiding them, and you won't have any trouble when GL closes the year and gets rid of those journal entries that are the underlying basis for those checks. Okay, now Mary Jo's going to talk about the rest of the items on our list. So Mary Jo.
Okay, I need you to give me the keyboard and mouse first.
I do need to do that, don't I?
Move around.
There we go.
Okay, there we are. All right, so what I'm going to talk about is in General Ledger, archiving your prior year's client. What is a GLS client? Well, you can have several different GLS clients set up over here in General Ledger. Oops, we got to get you out of here.
Yeah, get me out of accounts payable.
So when we are in, you have the ability to set up as many clients as you want. What is the client? It's where all of your General Ledger information is going to live for your company. Now, sometimes we've got firms that maybe have, like in this case, we've got Jensen, Martin, and Anderson, but they may also be doing business for a second entity within the firm. Maybe it's for, of counsels, and they're under a different name, or maybe you have a different business that you handle to rent your building, or there's different clients you may need to maintain a chart of accounts for, and accounts payable vendors that are totally separate, and they may go into different bank accounts, but you can do that all within General Ledger in one set of software. But the other nice thing about GLS clients is you can take your main client. Most of you probably only have one client. It's probably client number 1. And if you go down in here, you'll see you've got client lookups. You've only got one in here. At the end of the year, you may want to do what we call archive your GLS client. And what that means is we can take all of that information for GLS client number 1, and we can copy it, make a picture of it, and archive it, and put it into a directory so we can always go back and look at all the journal entries. We can always go back and look at any of the income statements or any of our reports that we want to do simply by coming in here and choosing client number 2, client number 3, client number 4, and still maintain our client number 1 for the next current year. So to do that, right now you can see if I went in here and I wanted to try to assign client number 2, I can't because there isn't a client number 2 available. So what you need to do is this little limits button here is if you go ahead and you click on that, you can give it a new limit and say that you want a new limit of 2. Now if you've already got some of these things archived, of course it's going to be the next available number that's in here. You say OK, and now if I come in here, I have that option to go ahead and choose client number 2. And what I will name this client will probably just be the name of my firm, whatever that is. So just firm, and then I would just say that this is 2009. You know, so you put your firm name, 2009, archive, whatever you want to do there. Now the General Ledger path, you're going to want to create a new General Ledger path. And all you need to do, it's going to put it in your same directory where your STI data lives. All you have to do is name it, the year, or whatever you want. Here's 2009. And I can go ahead and I can just say this is going to be my archive. It's going to create the path for me and create the folder for me. So whatever you want to name that, it's going to put this firm 2009. It will go ahead and put that right into my STI folder. Okay? So after I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Save. And it's going to ask me here, path is not found. You want to create it. You say yes. And it says copy an existing client's chart of accounts. This is what we want to do. We want to copy the existing chart of accounts and all the journal entries. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say yes. Then it's going to ask me, what client do you want to copy? Well, I want to do client number 1. I want all of their information because my client number 1 is where all of my current data always lives. Then I want to come in here and it's asking me if I want to copy the old client's account balances. I do. Do you want to copy the old client's journal entries? I do. And then if you have reoccurring entries or you use those, you may want to copy those as well. If you don't use reoccurring entries, then you don't have to. But that I'm going to go ahead and check all 3. And then you go ahead and you say, OK, copy is completed. And now I can go in and I can switch. If I am on client number 1, and you know when you can go in and you can select your client here, it defaults to number 1. But if I come in and I choose that I want number 2, it's going to go ahead and switch my client to number 2. You can see it's named, my GLS path is 2009. And now when I come in here and I go into any report or any of that information, I will be seeing my archived information from 2009. So I will have everything that I've backed up, all of my journal entries under client number 2. So if I ever have to go in and find an entry I made or something like that to see what happened, I can do that.
Now I'm going to interject something. I'm going to be the voice of reason. Mm-hmm. One thing that people are thinking is, well, what's the difference between that and what Paul was talking about? Well, I was talking about making an entire copy of your directory so that later on you can see where things stood at that point in time, anywhere, tabs, GL, AP. But that copy of your directory is very big, and it's very disk intensive, and it's taking up a lot of room. And its purpose is primarily to allow you to go back and look at anything in the STI software. But once you're done with that need, you should probably get rid of it because it takes a lot of space. This gives you that same ability in GL, not in AP, not in Trust, not in Tabs, but in GL, and it's much more compact, and it can go on forever and ever. If you had STI software for 20 years from this point forward and you follow our advice, it's going to take very little space to have that 20 years worth of history. If you made copies of all the directories along the way, you might run out of disk space because you're taking up a lot of space to do that. So that's.
And I just worked on a client today that had 13 GLS clients created. They had 1997 through 2008 already created. They'd archived every single year, and they've got a copy that they can always go back to for any reason and get the information from their general ledger. So that's how you do a client. Any questions on that, or any concerns, or anything
No
on
hands,
how to
no
create a
questions.
client? Okay.
We must be explaining this stuff real good.
I think they just got it down because they're so All right. So my next thing was, what kind of reports do you run at the year end? You know, what do you need to see? Now this is going to vary firm by firm. So if you run regular accounting reports at the end of every month, of course you're going to run those same ones at the end of the year. You're always going to do your data file integrity check and run that. You're going to, I would just always go through and do an AR report. In Tabs, I would do a WIP report so you can see anything that was outstanding as of 12/31. You can run, I would say, I would do a write-up, write-down report, just things that you're going to need to show your accountant. And your accountant may have a list of the things that they want to see, and then you would just run those reports. Now, if you do the backup like Paul said, you can at any time go back into that copy and run those reports at any time and get that figure from the end of the year. So if you forget one later on and you've made that backup and your account comes back later and says, oh, wait, I need the unallocated report, and you're like, huh, you can just go into your copy and you can make that unallocated report and do it there. But if you're, heads up, just do the reports that you would normally do at the end of the month for the end of the year, advance your year, and then go ahead and run your data file integrity check. Those are the main reports, and do that in every program that you have running. If it's GL, AP, Trust, Practice Master, Tabs, do those procedures in every software that you're running. Don't be afraid to close your year out. If you've made that copy and you're all set, close your year. If you need to make changes, you can always go back and adjust the prior year. That's not a problem. And, your accountant is probably sometime in January or February going to hand you a list of, end of the year journal entries that you need to do to adjust for depreciation and all those kind of things. Don't worry about it. Just go in, make your adjustment as of 12/31. That's fine. Just understand that your copy did not have that final journal entry in it. So you may want to make that adjusting entry in that copy as well. Okay? So you have those end of the year figures accurate.
And of course, after you've done any adjusting entries, you need to reprint your balance sheet and your income statement for year end, because they will change that.
The next thing that we're going to point you in the direction of is, where can you get help? Where can you get some questions answered? And we always have a list of knowledge-based articles that you can always go to. They're laid out real nice, where they have year-end procedures for each module of the software. So you can go into the Tabs year-end review. You can go into the General Ledger year-end overview, and it will answer, it'll tell you the procedures to do. It'll tell you how to archive the client. It'll give you those steps in case you forget after we hang up. It will give you some suggested reports. It'll answer several questions that people have asked. What does this mean? What is it if I close this? What happens to my figures and all that? It has some more additional information that we don't have time to go into, but you can read. And if you have questions on that, of course, Paul and I can always answer those offline, privately. So the KB articles that I have, do you want to read those, Paul, or do you have them listed out, or?
Well, I've got the screen right here.
Okay, there you go.
If you go to Tabs, support.tabs3.com, you will end up at a place where, let's just go there so you can see exactly what we did.
Or you can go into your help in any of the software and go to Internet Resources and then click on Knowledge Base.
Right, and for some reason I'm not getting back to that main screen, so I'm going to back up this way. This is what it looks like, and this is exactly what we did just moments before we started this virtual user group meeting. We simply typed year end, and when we did that and hit the go button, one of the articles was the year-end overview for all software products. It also shows you the Tabs 3, the GL, the accounts payable, but those are all summarized here, and this is knowledge base article R10429. So if you actually write down R10429, and then when you get to here, you can simply search for it. You can click on search here and type R10429. You can search for it here, but bottom line is you want to get to that R10429. Am I saying that right? 10429, and that will then take you to separate articles on year-end overviews for Tabs, General Ledger, Accounts Payable, and Trust Accounting. And like Mary Jo said, there's a whole wealth of information in here. It explains certain things in greater detail than we would in a virtual user group meeting. And it explains certain things that are only of interest to certain people. So the best thing to do is just print those 4 articles out or read them on the screen if you're prone to do that, and they will answer a lot of questions also. I do not see any hands. I do not see any questions, so I'm going to assume that everybody feels comfortable with that. We do record these water coolers. In fact, we had a couple people email us just before we started this meeting saying that unfortunately they wouldn't be able to attend, probably because of the short week. And we will send them links to this. It'll be available sometime this afternoon or tomorrow, depending on what else turns up. So if you want to get a link to this so that you can review this session we're attending right now at your leisure or cover key points with other people in your firm, just send me an email. It's paul.purdue, and that's Purdue like the school, not the chicken, and that's P-U-R-D-U-E. So it's paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com, and I'll be sure to reply with a link to the recorded version of this webinar of this water cooler virtual user group meeting. Also, if you come up with other questions that we haven't covered, please send them to us, because we're always looking to enhance the information that we're providing people at the end of the year. And for instance, that idea about backing up your entire directory and being able to go back and look at that slice of time as if you were there, that was an idea that I believe one of the user group attendees came up with. So anything like that or any questions, let us know. And if you don't have any more questions now and nobody knows any lawyer jokes, then I will have to say that we are done with the November 2009 virtual user group meeting that we affectionately call the water cooler. Thanks very much, everybody, and have a good afternoon.